Keisha Thomas was 18 years old when the KKK held a rally in her hometown of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hundreds of protesters turned out to tell the KKK they were not welcome in their college town. And then everything exploded. A man with a swastika tattoo wearing a t-shirt with a Confederate flag ends up on the protesters' side of the fence. And the group Keisha was with chases him down, knocks him to the ground, and starts beating him with placard sticks. And people are shouting, "Kill the Nazi." Then Keisha, a high school senior, 18 years old, fearing the mob mentality be taking over, decides to act. She throws herself on top of the KKK man, protecting him from the blows, screaming to the crowd, "You can't beat goodness into a person." Here's a picture of this incredible moment. It was over 20 years ago. Later, when asked about all of this, Keisha is quoted as saying, "I know what it's like to be beaten, and I always wish someone would have stood up for me. Violence is violence. Nobody deserves to be hurt, especially not for an idea. You can't beat goodness into people." What a line. You can't beat goodness into people. You can't fight fire with fire and think your actions are justified and the other person's aren't. I mean, Keisha's story is so applicable when thinking about how we are to put goodness into the world. I mean, you can't beat it into people. I mean, goodness, it's a fruit of the Spirit, and it's God's intention for how humanity is to live. But we need to ask, what is goodness? Webster defines goodness as the state of being good. This is not a helpful definition. But then it also says goodness is moral excellence, or the best part of anything. I like that last one. Goodness is the best part of anything. The essence of something, the core, the center of a thing, the nucleus of whatever is unfolding. And it's the fruit that we're asked to bear. As Christians, we should be people who, despite the context, despite the pain or the fear or the circumstances, we should be people who show goodness, who birth goodness, who see the best of what is in the moment. And that's what our passage in Romans teaches us. Listen to Paul's charge for what a real Christian should act like. This is Romans 12, 9 through 21. "Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If you're thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." These are some of Paul's best words. You can paraphrase all of this by saying, you can't beat goodness into people. But my goodness, we keep trying. We'd rather fight fire with fire. Retributive justice is easier than restorative justice, and we've been this way since the beginning. I don't find it coincidental. I find it intentional that the very beginning of our Bible, Genesis 1, in the beginning, God creates life and declares each of the 6 days good. What God created in those days were the best of us. But when turned over to us to manage, we abuse it. So God tells it to us again. In the book of Exodus, God comes to Moses saying, I will make all my goodness pass before you. I will proclaim before you the name the Lord. This was right before the 10 Commandments were given. Of course, we fail at this list of objectives too. So God tells it to us again. In 2 Chronicles 7:10, David says, Israel will be joyful in good spirits because of all the goodness of the Lord. Of course, if you know the story of the Old Testament, we fail to listen to this too. So then God comes to us again, this time in Nehemiah. The people in Nehemiah have decided that they no longer need God's goodness. So Nehemiah 9:25 says, even in their own kingdom, and in the great goodness you bestowed on them, God, and in the large and rich land that you set before them, they did not serve you and did not turn from their wicked works. So humanity once again failed. The people in Nehemiah, the people in Chronicles, the people in Exodus, and even in Genesis, they're microcosms of humanity today. God tells humanity repeatedly what is good, but we don't listen. Or if we do, we soon forget, because it's easier to try and beat goodness into our enemy or even ourselves. But we're wrong. Goodness is seeing the best of what is, the essence of someone, the true essence of our own selves, no matter what. Several years ago, the New York Times wrote about a Yale-trained Manhattan physician named Joyce Wallace. With her pedigree, she should have had an Upper East Side medical practice, but instead, her clinic was traveling around in a Ford Econoline van. She spent her days driving around Midtown Manhattan offering medical care to women in prostitution. She would bind up their wounds, run tests, offer a word of liberation saying, you don't have to live like this if you don't want. There are some of us who would help and support you. The Times reporter was somewhat skeptical with Dr. Wallace's life choice, and he asked her, isn't it a little disparaging to know that most, if not all, of your patients go on practicing prostitution and then die of drug overdose or AIDS? Do you ever feel like you're just wasting your time? Dr. Wallace responds, well, that's one way to look at it. But my mother taught me another way. My mother was a teacher in the exceptional children's program her entire career, and she always taught me, don't look at the damage. Look at the image. Don't look at the damage time does to people. Look at the image of God preserved in them for eternity. Don't look thinking you'll see only damage. Look beyond it and see the image of God. Don't judge others for what time has done, but see through it into who they really are. Dr. Wallace said to the Times reporter, I learned this lesson best one night when the school PTA asked my mother's class to provide the entertainment. My mother rehearsed with her kids on singing songs from the Broadway musical My Fair Lady. It never occurred to my mother that there wouldn't be a dry eye in the room and that parents would dissolve into tears, because it never occurred to my mother not to let a little girl in a wheelchair roll out across the stage singing, I could have danced all night. I could have danced all night. And because Jesus Christ is the true essence and the goodness in all of us, dancing she did, and dancing we will. And even though we keep failing at being good, sometimes we get it right. And not all the time, but all the time God does keep coming back, hoping we'll be people who see the best in others, in things, and then share this goodness. Because God knows God can't beat goodness into us, and we can't beat it into others. It has to be something that grows out of a relationship with Christ. And 90-year-old Florida resident Arnold Abbott from Fort Lauderdale agrees. You may have heard of this story. Arnold has since passed away, but his story is amazing. Stephen Colbert did a segment on him back when he was still hosting the Colbert Report. Arnold Abbott would get arrested every week for feeding people who were experiencing homelessness. Fort Lauderdale had just passed a law that people who were experiencing homelessness were not allowed to congregate in open social spaces, and then citizens were not allowed to feed them there either. You may be asking, why such a law? Fort Lauderdale wants to be an attractive city for tourism and vacations, and the elite don't like to be disturbed by people in significant need. So Arnold Abbott hated this law. He chose to defy it. He set up a soup kitchen out in the middle of the city, and he hosted breakfasts, lunches, and dinners for the hundreds of people experiencing homelessness in the city. And he did it because he chose to see the best in humanity. And he believed everyone deserved to be fed. They deserved to be loved. People like Arnold, 90 years old, standing against hate with goodness inspires me. And so do the police in this story too. When the police come to arrest Arnold, they always let him finish serving. People would get their food, they'd be able to eat, everything would then get cleaned up, which the police would help do, and then they would arrest Arnold. Even they see the unjustness of the law. The police have eyes to see the goodness of God manifesting in Arnold's actions. Even they know you can't beat goodness into someone. The whole story is remarkable. It's a parable of how to see the image of others instead of the damage. So remember, goodness can't be beaten into someone. Goodness is seeing the image, not the damage. And we're called to this. As Romans says, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, live in harmony with one another. Do not overcome evil by doing evil, but overcome evil with good. This is what the fruit of goodness looks like.